speakers to also come up and maybe resume their seats. So what we're going to do now is that you're going to hear the one sentence that's coming out of each group. It will be the call to action, and then I'm not sure our speakers know this actually, but we're going to ask them to give a 4-minute feedback on what they think about the day, about what they've heard, and so let's just start firstly with the feedback from the groups.
In any particular order?
No, just organise yourself.
I will. So our group talked about resilient communities, and we came down to a living oasis supporting everyone through good times and bad, because you need to learn to share and support in the good times, or it's really hard when it's bad.
Eco-spirituality. Oops. We are called to be a good friend and neighbour, exploring eco-spirituality with hospitality, hope and care.
We looked at public leadership, and it goes like this. We call on churches to become catalysts for action, collaborating, and where necessary, convening, locally and nationally. Open to learn from others, but seeking to be prophetic in the present crisis.
Community learning. Act as an interconnected centre, welcoming all individuals and communities, hosting and signposting them to activities and ways of developing practical and spiritual resilience.
This was opportunities for church buildings, and we would like everyone to open our churches to be available in these times of crisis to people of our communities.
Mine's going to be much longer than that. As a resilient churches, as a resilient church, we will build relationships by creating hubs to plan for climate disruption and provide resources for church and community.
We had the topic of church leadership and teaching, and we stuck rigorously to 6 words. So here goes. Truthful, creation-led, learning, leadership, and worship.
That's everybody. What interesting and rich discussions. And I'm going to now ask our speakers to do 2 things, really. Firstly, to provide any final reflections on what they've heard today and anything that struck them from the group discussions. You will have seen that they were wandering around and listening, but they'll have also heard the one sentence that you've just given, or in some cases, quite a lot more than one sentence. Secondly, I'm going to invite them to think about and to help us with how we might take this forward. Rupert, do you think I could ask you to go?
So, it's obviously not an easy job to try to respond and summarize on the spot. But I guess I have been quite encouraged by the day. In terms of those sentences that we heard, it did seem to me that there was a lot of coherence between them. There's certainly a lot of interest in this group in ideas of churches becoming something like community resilience hubs. And there's certainly quite a lot of appetite in this group for for real spiritual leadership, for prophetic leadership. I find that quite exciting. In terms of follow-ups from the day, so we're going to have these videos from today. I hope that they might be of quite wide interest, actually. I can certainly think already of a number of people, quite diverse people from diverse traditions, etc., who I would like to share them with. There's also talk already of some articles to come out of today in publications like Green Christian publications, but also others like the Church Times. That seems to me a very smart idea. And in terms of what you're going to do with the sentences and some kind of communication, we would have said in the old days, we would have said a communique. I think that could be worthwhile too as part of this process of spreading the word about what has been achieved here and creating the potentiality for some real ripples and waves to spread out and some real follow-up to it. So I found all of that very, exciting and encouraging, really. I've got one other thing I want to kind of dwell on a bit, which comes out of George's comments just now from that group, the political group, and also from one of the other groups I was in, which is I just want to really stress the extent to which we should be uncertain about what the future holds. I think it would be a mistake to go away from today thinking something like, okay, so we know now that we're on a kind of better road, potentially spiritually and religiously or something. That's probably an obvious point, but anyone who thinks that isn't really thinking about the extent to which what happens now depends upon what we do. It depends upon what you do, and there is a real extent to which that is the case. And that point goes much more widely, right? So we don't know what the future's going to hold, partly because we don't know what ourselves and other people are going to do. And that's true of everybody. So anyone who claims to be able to tell you that the future is going to be really good because we're going to change course is mistaken, because they don't know that. But equally, anyone who tells you that the future is going to be really bad is also mistaken, because we don't know how we're going to respond and step into our full power and potentiality in relation to what is coming. So in specific relation to the potentiality of a change of government in the next few years in this country, yes, there is a real possibility that we end up with a government which is more right-wing, deregulatory, climate skeptical, etc., than we've ever had before, which would be amazingly catastrophic. There is also a real possibility that we get a reform-led government which is actually not like that, in the sense that it is possible that, as I was implying earlier, that someone who is as politically savvy as Nigel Farage, for example, might figure out that if he wants to get into number 10 Downing Street, then his party's policies on climate and environment are not helping him. It is also possible that there could be, that there are new political forces rising, and the Green Party is rising dramatically. There could be a constellation which takes power after the next election, which looks, frankly, much better than the government we have at the moment in relation to the things we're talking about. All of these things are possibilities. We don't know which of them is going to happen, and which of them happens will partly depend on what people like us decide to do. And one final level of uncertainty, as we discussed in one of the other groups, so I've been talking about adaptation, and it's a real mistake to think that adaptation is adaptation to a climate which will continue to get hotter, because that may well be what happens, but it also may not be what happens. Some of you will be aware that there is increasing worry about the Gulf Stream, or there are other more technical ways of describing it, what may be happening to the North Atlantic and other Atlantic currents. Very ironically, it's possible that climate breakdown may cause there to be a sudden cooling in this country over the next generation. We don't even know that the future is going to be hotter. We kind of know it's going to be more chaotic, but we don't know what form that chaos will take, and we certainly don't know that it's going to be hotter or colder or something in between or kind of a bit of both. So again, that implies that our task of adaptation is a really very challenging one, but a very necessary one and a very kind of wide open one. So I guess that's my kind of final message for today. We need to follow our North Stars without having knowledge about whether we're going to get to where we want to get to, or even what the forces are that we're going to have to try to battle as we try to get there, right? So we have to be, as the Buddhists put it, non-attached to outcomes, right? It has to be about actually we're doing what we're trying to do here because it's what is right and what comes from our deepest spiritual beliefs and substrate, and from what we feel in our bones and so forth, and from what we understand our calling to be. That's what needs to be our basis, not some kind of instrumental idea of, oh, if we do these things, then we'll have a better outcome, let alone some kind of idea of, well, because the future is going to be really terrible, we have to do these other things. We don't know any of those things for sure. We have to operate in that sphere of radical uncertainty, which, as I say, is very challenging, but also in another way quite kind of liberating, because it means that there are many possibilities, and it means actually when you let go of the things that you can't know about, it makes it, I think, easier to hang on to the things which are really important, which is who we are, what we're trying to do, what we're called to do, what our life's purpose is. So that would be my attempt to summarize some ways forward from here.
Yeah, thank you for today. It's been really interesting, and to have this conversation that I alluded to is happening in pockets, doing this kind of work, but as a national programme in the Church of England, certainly not. So lots of food for thought for me to take away. One of the things I reflect on, if we're talking about building resilient churches and resilient communities, I think actually we're doing a lot of that already. There's so much work that comes from churches in communities, food banks, baby banks, debt advice, lunch clubs, toddler groups, elderly, making sure people aren't isolated or lonely. So much stuff happens in churches. All of that is part of building resilient communities, helping communities to weather the storms of life. None of those are particularly self-identified as being about adapting to climate change, but they're all about building resilient communities. And as the storms come, which we don't know which way they're going to go, as Rupert put, we're going to need all those things in place, all those structures in place to help communities weather the storm. So we're doing a load of stuff already in our churches, and that's great, and we should keep doing that. So then maybe it's not so difficult to make that step and say, oh, yeah, so we're building resilient, we may not even identify it as that, but we're doing this community work, trying to support our communities, encourage, help our communities. Actually, let's just think a little bit wider or a little bit deeper. What does that mean to think about the changing climate? What do we need to add to that? Might not be very much. Might just be a different way of thinking about things or a different way of framing things. So I don't think it would be a big leap to go from the stuff that we're doing already that's building resilient communities to making those communities resilient to the climate changes that are coming. There may be things connected with buildings or particular projects that you might need to do, but I don't think it's a big leap. It just takes a little bit of thought to move there. And then the other thing that I was reflecting just before we got into groups was we've got this far, and I realised that I myself was guilty of it without really talking about hope or love. And then actually that came out in some of the groups I was in. So I think if I could go back and write my talk again, I'd put it in. We are the church, and we are about hope, and we are about love. So all this stuff that we do with our communities, we're not building resilient communities, are we? That's not why we do it. We didn't think, what can we do to build resilient communities? We did it because we want to show love. We want to love the people in our church, in our neighbourhood. And so we need to keep doing that, and that's our driving force. We are here to love people. and to love the world that God has made and to encourage people to take care of the world that God has made. But essentially, we are demonstrating God's love. So what does that look like? And then what does it mean to be a church that's based and built on hope? And hope is a difficult word, was the phrase in the group that I was in. Well, it can mean many things, but in the Bible we talk about, it's not hoping for something that we don't know, but it's hoping for something that we do know, because we do know that Christ's died, Christ is risen, Christ will come again. We know that's coming. We know that we can absolutely rely on God. We have this hope. And we need to be hope for many people in the world who look at the chaos that's coming and don't know where to turn, don't know what to do with that. And maybe we feel that ourselves as well. We don't know what to do with that. We don't know where to turn. So we need to try and come back to that hope, come back to the fact that we do have hope. We do rely on a God who walks with us on this journey, who isn't going to let us down. And the future is uncertain, but God is not. And so we can hold on to hope ourselves, but we also can reflect hope for people in our churches, in our communities, in our world. So that's not big political action, but it is about love and hope.
How do I beat those three? I have no idea. First of all, thank you. I've thoroughly enjoyed my day. I think the richness of conversation, that diversity within that conversation, for me is what I've taken away. And sadly, Robert's already used another one of my words I like to use, it's encouraged. I'm encouraged by those conversations and the content within those conversations. I think there's an energy, if you forgive the pun, and I love all your genuinely intelligent, your GI-generated questions or responses that you've all created to those tasks. And I think from that, I think I will go away and I'll reflect. I'll take some of your, some of those conversations. Vanessa's already given me an idea for next year for how I want to go forward and spread my messages, and the messages really are linked to support and supporting people. And in doing that, that's how we grow our faith and our confidence and in the actions that we are supporting. And you guys, and equally Joe's mentioned, it should not take away all the good work that you've done. You should reflect on that and applaud yourselves for all the good work you've done so far, because you've done tremendous work and it's immeasurable. You've no idea how many people you may well have reached and touched who've then gone on to take those messages and that thinking and spread that seed further. So when you go away from this, reflect on where you've come from in terms of getting here, and don't think you're starting at a beginning point, a base point. You're already a long way up that ladder or a long way on that journey. In terms of bricks and mortar, we're custodians of these buildings, and the church is the building. The church, the wider church, our faith, our belief is out there with the people. But this is a building in which we come together. We can still build that church externally if we look externally. And in one of the conversations we were having was talking about how do we look outwards? How do we look towards our communities around us? And we even talked about, rather than communities, because that, and our communities kind of makes it feel as though they're ours. They're not. How do we look around us, at the people around us, and build better communities and relationship? And we can only do that if we look externally. If we look outwards, see what their needs are, and plan to meet their needs based on what we have and can give. And a lot of what we can, or have and can give, is that love that Joe has already mentioned, our own ability to just be accepting and supporting of other people's needs. I think what I will take away from this is the fact that I also need to look at myself, because I've had conversations in between sessions and realised that actually what I'm trying to do, it often doesn't reach you guys. And it doesn't reach you guys because sometimes I'm passing my messages to people, and I've given you acronyms today of people in conversations, and they've gone, who are they? So for me, I've also got to recognise somehow, for me to reach further, I've got to make the information that I pass out and present in order to move that missional goal of net zero further and wider and make it more accessible to you guys. And it's you guys that are at the green coalface and will deliver the real change. I'm only passing messages about policies and best practice. You guys are the important people. I go away from this with ambition. I hope you do. I have a ridiculous ambition. I don't know whether I'll achieve it. My ambition is to be the 100 metres record holder as a centenarian. One, I don't know if I'll remember it, even if I get to 100. I don't know if I'll be able to run or walk, and I don't even know if I'll make 100. But I will start my pre-season training in a few more years' time. I hope I'm measured on my ambition in order to achieve that, or my efforts in order to achieve that ambition. Go ahead, do whatever you need to do, and be measured on your activities, not your successes. Your successes will come. You just need to look and go forward with your thoughts. Thank you.
Similarly, it's been really interesting to be part of this day and to reconnect with you from last year where I was present at the retreat. One thought is, I don't know if you know, there is the Eco Church initiative. And I've been thinking about, so what has Green Christian got to add to that? And I wonder whether, this is just something for you to take away and think about, but is this idea of adaptation, resilience, something you can bring to that perhaps isn't, I don't think it's so obviously part of that agenda and that program. So maybe there's something here that Green Christian have to bring, is this sense of how can the church be part of preparing and actively thinking through what does it mean for our churches to be hubs of adaptation and resilience. So this might be something that you bring to the bigger sort of UK-wide picture. Just something for you to think about. Because I don't think it has been as signposted, as thought about, and that's why I'm really grateful, Rupert, for you coming and speaking, because it's certainly, I don't know, it's just raised it in my thinking now. Okay, this is a really important part of how we need to be approaching climate and nature breakdown. So just offer that. And then, obviously, days like this are full of words, aren't they? And we go away and we've had a lot of interesting conversations, thoughts. I would just encourage each of you to think, what am I taking away from today? And what am I going to put into action in some way? Where am I going to really follow through something in my own context? And in a way, you've got each other as a network to support each other in your own context, but how do you see yourselves as that active agents in your own context? What are you going to take from today as your own little mini call to action? You're going to put a call to action to the wider body of the church, but what's each of your senses of where you're being called to act? And then lastly, I think, just going back to what I was talking about in terms of what is the core of resilience. And again, I just think it is about relationships of deep trust. That without that, real meaningful action is not possible. And we need to both be becoming people of trust who can be trusted, communities of trust that can be trusted, and places where people can recover their crisis of trust, where faith can be built again from despair, lack of hope. So I think we need to be these communities that are building that sense of trust and faith again. And each of us can be, has a huge role to play in that.
Well, we all have a lot of work to do. We have to go out there and put our vision into action in whatever way we feel called to do, acts big and small. And it's really hard to do this work if you're doing it alone. And if there's one thing I have learned through my involvement with climate action, is that you need to be part of a community. And this is our community. So as you go out, know that you're not alone, that you are supported within the Green Christian community, and that we're here for each other. I'm going to leave my thank yous till after Andrew has said a closing prayer, but I just wanted to leave you with that reflection on the day that we are together in this.
So let's be thankful for today, for each other, for all that today has made possible. Breath of God, enlivening all creation, lift our eyes to the wonder that surrounds us. Wind of God, vibrant in every movement, open our minds to the mystery of life. Spirit of God, source of transformation and life, sustain us to be people of hope. Amen.
Well, it just remains for me to say some thank yous, big thank yous. Thank you, first of all, to all our speakers, to Rupert, to Joe, to Adrian, to Vanessa, for the wisdom that they have shared with us, for their powerful words, and for their encouragement. I'm sure that for each of them, if you have more contributions to make, they would be glad for you to get in touch. Can I say that on your behalf? Yes, they're all nodding. So, can I ask you just to put your hands together again, just to say thank you to them.